Welcome everybody to this live webinar on how to make runes or making runes. I'm sure a lot of you already actually know how to make runes and are probably already making your own. So that's pretty wonderful. But welcome and thank you so much everyone for joining us today. This is a really spontaneous event because last week, I think it was maybe nearly 2 weeks ago, we actually did a live webinar on working with runes, and from that webinar this one showed up. Really, it just emerged and seemed like a really good fun thing to do. So welcome everyone who's joined us. I can see stuff going on in the chat. Welcome Dermot as well, and thank you Dermot for moderating and being here. I know some of you guys that are showing up regularly will have been getting to know Dermot quite well in the chat. Dermot, thank you so much for giving us your time on a Saturday. It's wonderful just to have you there connecting in with people. And welcome everybody, and also I want to say welcome in advance to anybody who actually is watching the recording of this, because it will be permanently up on YouTube, so can be connected in with at any time really. And of course, that actually leads me on to maybe the first point that I'm going to make, which is you don't have to make lots and lots of notes about the things that I'm saying. Firstly, because you can come back to this webinar at any time and rewatch it if you wish to. I will also prepare a handout that goes with it. And of course, the handout from the last webinar on working with runes is available permanently. If you look in the information box below, and if you join the Sunday Rune and Card reading email list, you will be able to, it will literally take you to a page where you can get PDF downloads with all the extra guidance for the Sunday readings, and also all of the PDF downloads, or any of them that I do in connection to any of these webinars. So you'll be able to find everything that you're looking for and download it. So if you haven't actually been following any of these webinars and you suddenly find this one randomly and you want to go back to any of the others, you'll be able to link in with the handouts and the webinars as well. They're also in a playlist on the AZ Emotional Health YouTube channel. So wonderful people, we have such an array of things to be working with today. I have had so much fun actually getting ready for this workshop today, playing around with different materials, particularly as you know, we're recording this while we are still in a lockdown. It's 2020. I'm trying to remember, it's the 16th of May. I ought to know that. It's the 16th of May 2020. We are in a lockdown. And the reason this almost came about from our last webinar is because I really wanted to encourage people, if they were in lockdown and they were wanting to learn to work with runes, just to make them. We don't have to go out at great expense and buy things, and you know, sometimes we can't even get deliveries depending on where we are in the world. And actually there's something really special about investing our energy into something that we are then going to use. And that's actually the first thing that I'm going to speak about. I'm going to switch the camera down as well so you can see the array of different materials that we are going to look into using. But in fact, actually, perhaps I'll just do that now. I'll switch to the other camera so you guys can see things, and I will talk you through a little bit around the energy and the intention that we invest in something that we actually make for ourselves. So let's switch down. So this is the wide array of stuff that we are going to be connecting in with. And I'm going to talk you through some of the more traditional ways of making runes, the runes that you can buy, the runes that you can make, and the different materials, and some of the things I've actually been experimenting with, which has been really good fun and very interesting as well. Some real surprises coming up. So these runes are the runes that most people will be able to access if you wish to buy them. I've had these since I was a teenager, so I have a very strong bond and relationship with them. And in the webinar about runes, I actually made these just out of recycled cardboard. And I realized when I was making them, it was purely to encourage people not to feel as though they couldn't access things, and that they could really get stuck into working with runes straight away if they wanted to. As I was working and making these, I realized they actually have an incredible energy, and they're very basic. It's a piece of recycled cardboard. It's drawn on with a marker pen. But actually, it's a bit like, for me, preparing a meal. You know, when we talk about soul food, we're talking about food that we prepare And when someone gets to eat that food, they don't just get the actual ingredients, they also get the energy that we've put into it. So if you cook a meal and you prepare it with love and all of that love, all of that intention to give to someone, they're going to receive that as well. And it's exactly the same when we make something like runes. The energy that we ourselves are investing is going to be imbued energetically in those runes. So whether you make something out of some recycled cardboard or you use a more elaborate form of material, one of the keys here is about the way in which you approach it energetically and the way in which that will then kind of be invested in the energy of the runes themselves. So if you feel that you would like to make runes but you're sort of worried about getting it right, there isn't a right way to do this. And that was something I also really learned in my journey of preparation, because I had it in my head that I would actually make some runes on some pebbles. But I don't live in an area where there are nice round pebbles. They just don't exist in this area. And at the moment, it's not really viable to drive miles to a beach and collect pebbles. So I started looking for the stones that I could find. Now, I live in an area where there's a lot of sandstone and a lot of flint. And I found these. And I have to say, I brought them home and I've been looking at them. I have more than I need for the set of runes. And again, they have a really wonderful energy. And in fact, some of them I've noticed, I tried to get stones that had at least a sort of a flattish side to them that I would be able to put the symbol of the rune on. But what I've noticed is that some of them actually almost, they draw you to a particular symbol. So the one that I practiced with was this little one. It's literally the rune of ice, of standstill. I used a permanent marker pen. I've even washed it since to see, and it doesn't come off. And just the shape of it lent itself really, really beautifully. And so I really found myself thinking, we don't actually have to make something that's uniform. We can really go out and see what we tune in with, see what we connect with. And for example, this rune, here I am calling it a rune already. This stone, I'm going to have to hold it right up to the camera, but if you can see in it, it's got the most, I don't know if the camera will focus enough on it actually, it may be a little bit blurred, but it's got the most wonderful faint markings in it. And actually this will be my blank rune. It's got an almost sort of circular line that runs through it. It's lending itself already, it's speaking to me of the nature of that rune. So that was what I wanted to really begin today with, which was, don't ever feel afraid to just have a go at working with something. There's no rights or wrong. Even though there are certain traditions that we can follow, we don't need to follow them. What matters is the intention and the investment of our energy in the project, if you like, or in the making of these runes. And the more that you are involved wholeheartedly on an energetic level with your runes, the stronger your relationship will be with them, and the more clearly they will be able to speak both to you and through you. So that's my kind of starting point. Now the next thing I'm going to dive into before we go into the different materials that I myself have played with this week, and I'll talk about some traditional ways of making runes as well as some sort of new ideas that I've had that I've really enjoyed working with. I would always, again, if you're going to start making your runes, light a candle to start with. Make this space a sacred space. I've actually brought in, I've already been burning, you can see here, I've been burning white sage. I also have desert sage here, and I also have sweetgrass. Now, for those of you that are familiar with these herbs, my apologies if I'm repeating things you know, but white sage in the form of either a smudge stick or just pieces of it, when we burn it, again, we sort of let the smoke cleanse. It's known to, it literally changes the ions in the air. So, and that's been scientifically proven. So it's a great cleanser and it removes any form of negativity. So it's a very good starting point just to be able to light a little bit of sage. In fact, I'll just light a little bit now. Just going to put that over my candle for one moment. And I need to say, please do this safely. I feel like I'm in a sort of one of those TV programs where you have to remind people, but can you see it's like really let's just cleanse not just the area but the ingredients, allow that to kind of really filter around everything. And I would also like to use a little bit of sweetgrass as well as sage. Now the reason I want to use sweetgrass is because just as white sage will cleanse and release any form of negativity, sweetgrass, known as grandmother's hair, it usually comes in a plait like this. It has a wonderful smell when we burn it. It's very like vanilla is probably the way I would describe it. But sweetgrass actually attracts positivity. So you have one sort of energy cleansing, and then you have another energy that is literally drawing in. I'm just going to burn a tiny little bit here. You can see it will go quite easily again. You usually have to burn a little bit more of this if you actually want to get it to smoke fairly well. A sage smokes terribly easily, but there we go. But very, very lovely, really gorgeous vanilla smell. And again, it's just moving that around your materials, because it actually literally draws in positivity. There's a very big difference, I think, between repelling negativity and drawing in positivity, and they are a wonderful combination. So I'm going to just leave those there, and that's the kind of cleansing that I would suggest. If you're able to, you do. If you haven't got those available, it doesn't matter. You could light a candle, you could again, set your intentions. Remember, words energetically carry power as well. It's why we kind of pray. It's why I often say to people, try not to worry, because, I think an intention is a focused thought, and a prayer is a focused thought. Worries are also focused thoughts, but they're generally putting something into the universe that we don't want rather than the thing that we do want. So very, very helpful to just be mindful of setting intentions as we begin. We don't have to cleanse with the herbs if we don't have them, but it's wonderful if we do. Light a joss stick. Whatever is right for you will be right for you and for your runes as well. So let us begin by looking at some of the materials that we can use. And I'm also going to look at, show you first of all some of the traditional materials. Now, in ancient traditions, as far as I know, stones would be used, so would pieces of wood, and also so sometimes would bone be used as well. I don't have any pieces of bone, and I'm not going to be working with that. What I do have is some slices of apple wood, and actually apple wood was traditionally used for the making of runes. Now for me that was just kind of quite handy, because I have apple trees in my garden, and where I had pruned them I had kept the cuttings, and so they are really, really perfect. I've actually spliced up a whole load of these, and what I actually did was to use, for the two that I've done so far, I actually bought one of these little devices, which is, it's like a heating iron. It comes with various different nibs on it. You plug it in, it's electric, and once it's heated up, I have to say it's a slow and gentle process, and it takes a little bit of a knack. You need to be very, very slow for it to mark the wood, and perhaps particularly because this is obviously seasoned apple wood, which is quite hard and quite dense. But also, just to say something about using wood, I think that using a hardwood is pretty important. Earlier, when I was playing around with different pieces of wood, I actually got a piece of driftwood out, and I spliced it up. It's actually got some really lovely shapes inside it, but it's light as a feather, and I would think this is not going to last very long, even though it would be easy to burn, or even easier to sort of mark it or to paint on them. I'm not convinced they'll last very long. I think they'll probably break with handling, whereas I think these are going to be durable, they're going to be strong. And so even in my playing around with different things, I actually did feel that a hardwood was going to be the most appropriate. And as I said, applewood is interesting because it is a fruit-bearing tree. It was known to indicate choice as well. It's a tree that is used for fertility, and so again, really quite an appropriate energy if you're going to use slices of wood for your runes. So I'm not actually going to use the burner live. I was actually going to, and I had it going earlier, and then I kind of almost slightly got tangled up in my microphone wires, and I kind of imagined everything going horribly wrong and thought, actually, this is very hot and it's very slow. We have to really take our time. It will be better if we're going to actually do some making live just to talk you through this, but actually probably use some of the other methods, but nevertheless talk you through how this can work. It's a great little device, I have to say, so really well worth it if you want to be working with the wood for your runes. And as I said, definitely be using hardwood rather than the softwood. I'm going to move that out of our way. Now, the next method I'm going to speak about is, I actually, aside from using recycled products here, I actually bought some air drying clay. Now it comes in a pack and it looks like this. It's very easy to use, and this only arrived this morning, so I guess deliveries are quite slow at the moment, which is, you know, fair enough. And so I literally opened it up and I made one single rune this morning, the rune of movement, the bettering of any situation. It's the movement of something taking hold and gathering momentum, the flow of beings into their new form. I thought it had a lovely energy, and it's the one that just kind of came to me. And I actually felt that I wanted to make it into a circle. It was very easy to do, and although this is not completely dry, it is almost dry. So literally within a couple of hours, I'd say it's dry enough for me to actually think about either painting in to that sign that I've made. I can either paint in with maybe an acrylic paint, or indeed, even if I'm using a more water-based paint, I can always varnish afterwards. But one way or the other, it was really, really easy to use. And I might even use a marker pen to fill in the colour of that. So I'm actually just going to make another one here, just literally just to show you how straightforward that is. I've just got a tiny, tiny little piece of the clay. Just going to roll it around in my hands until I get it how I would like it. You could make any shape you want. I mean, literally any shape you want. You could go into the more traditional rune shapes, or you could... yeah, literally any shape you like. You could make them square, rectangular. I fancied circular ones for myself. That was just something that appealed to me. I'm going to move these away. I've got a little board underneath here, a slate that I can use. So I'm just going to put that here. They don't, of course, have to be the same size. My suggestion, if you really want your runes to be quite uniform, would be to make lots of little balls that are all approximately the same size and then flatten them. That way you'll be able to see pretty much. Let me move that heated iron away out of our way first. There we go. And then that's not then going to get tangled up in anything else. Okay, excuse me while I put that out of our way. So, curiously enough, I actually found that, you know, I know you can buy all kinds of little modelling tools for working with this clay. I actually found just the end of a teaspoon. It was like the very best tool for me. It seemed to work really, really well. So I'm going to just actually, I think I'm going to do rune number 2, which is actually the rune of partnership. Very, very easy to work with. And again, once you've done that, you can just settle it in a little bit, and then literally that will dry. That's air drying clay. And of course the marvelous thing is, if you're not happy with your shape at all, you can just kind of squidge it back up and start again, which is rather good, but I'm quite happy with that. And I think once that's dried, again, it's a little bit sort of flaky. I suppose it's some little marks in it, but I rather like that. I think you can dampen this clay if it starts to dry out, so that you can actually stop it from drying too quickly. But for me, it's a really, really lovely way of working. It's very tactile. You've got it in your hands, so you can literally be working with it in such a hands-on way. And as I said, they dry really, really quickly. Now, having just started this, there's a couple of other things that are coming to mind as I'm doing it. Just go back to our wood again. If you are working with wood and you're working with the burning tool, my apologies for jumping around, but it's a very spontaneous workshop today. if you are working with this, you might want to draw your symbol by pencil first. Now, my reason for that is because particularly with the wood, I think there's for me, there's quite a bit of practice involved in actually working with a tool that's especially a hot tool, and knowing that I need to get it in a way I do need to try and get it right. And so for me, I think actually using, let's say if I draw the rune of, I'm going to draw the rune of growth here, Berkana, symbolized by the birch tree actually. So I'm just going to draw that first, and then later on, this will be my next rune for getting the burning tool out with. But I would truly recommend, if you're using something that's hot like that, actually draw it in pencil first. I think that's quite a helpful thing to do. I think with the clay, it's a little bit different. There's probably less of an issue really, because if you don't like the shape you've done, you simply roll it up and start again, which is a really, really lovely thing to be able to do. It means it's a very easy material to work with. Now the next thing, before I move on to my other array of things that I'm going to use, is as you make your runes, I would recommend having a little notebook with you and keeping it with you, because not so much to make notes about how you do it or what worked and what didn't, by all means you can do that, but as you are sitting with a rune and you are working with that particular symbol, I would be having a notebook handy and listen to any insights, listen to the way that that symbol and that rune, your rune, is speaking to you. Now I will give you a good example of this. So let's take the rune of gateway here. Now the rune of gateway, in the meanings and interpretations that I have come across, it's very much a rune of reflection. It's a rune that asks us to pause and to really consider how things are, to look backwards in order to, it's like becoming still, meditating, looking backwards, reviewing before stepping through the gateway. Now for me, this rune has another layer, and maybe that is because of, I guess, the time that we are living in, the paradigm that we're moving into. There's so much change and transition around us. This rune for me has always spoken to me of gratitude, of leaning into the learning from any situation, and therefore being able to appreciate that we have always gained from something, even from adversity, because even if we face challenges as we review and look back, we will have gained because we will have grown because of them. And so when I say listen to the way the runes speak to you, I can genuinely tell you I have never read an interpretation of this rune that will tell you it speaks of gratitude beyond my own interpretations. But that has been spoken to me so clearly when I've used it. And over time, the more you work with your runes, the more you will find that there are very, very specific meanings that will come to you, and that will be the way in which the universal energy, the messages, the intuition is using you as a channel for interpretation to assist both yourself on your journey as well as others. And so I use this as a good example because for me, the interpretation and the meaning of this rune is very clear to me, but it's clear because it's come to me. And literally, as you are making your runes, particularly let's say if you're working with a tool that takes time, so let's say you're working with this tool that is burning into the wood, it's engraving itself into the wood, it's collaborating, energizing. As you begin to use tools to imprint into the clay, or you're holding the clay, and you're listening to the energy of that symbol, you may well find you receive downloads of information. So keep a notebook handy, because you might find that you begin to build a really very powerful set of meanings and interpretations that your runes will be able to kind of communicate with you specifically about. So keep a notebook handy as you are making them. Very much a sacred space to be using. I'm going to leave our rune of gateway here just for a moment. And I'm going to look at these little blocks that I'm going to actually use next in terms of the making of a rune. Now this is interesting because this really was purely something that kind of came to me through slightly trial and error. But when we did the live webinar and I wanted to produce the handouts, which are here, I needed a little symbol to put here. I didn't want to just write the name of the rune. I wanted to put the symbol so anyone downloading these would be able to connect them with the image. And I didn't have anything that I could photograph, so I actually created just a page. Very basic, and I used an oil pastel because I like the rusticness of oil pastels. You can see I've been playing with watercolour paint over the top to see what it looked like. And once I'd drawn these, I scanned them in and was able to then splice them up into their individual signs and place them into this document. So that was the purpose of that, almost that little piece of inquiry into drawing runes. But I really, really love the way that oil pastels and other materials mix and sort of spread. And so I wanted to be able to use some watercolour paper and to try some different materials. So I found myself a very old piece of MDF board. It's a little offcut that was literally in my garage. I don't even know where it came from. It may even have been in the garage when I moved here. But it's very random. It was sitting there, and so I picked it up and I glued some watercolour paper onto this. And I started playing around with oil pastels. And then I actually got out some watercolour, a watercolour pencil. And I played around with that as well, and I really, really liked that. I almost preferred it to the oil pastel look, really, as it were. And I then literally spliced, having glued this together, I spliced it into little pieces, little slices, cut them in half, and I ended up with these. It looks like a set almost of little rune-like dominoes. None of them are quite the same, and I'm really, really happy with that. I like things to not have to be perfect, but if you really, really wanted to get something accurately the same dimension, you could actually measure them out and draw them before you cut them. But it seemed to me to be a lovely use, again, of something that was just randomly sitting around. I have things like watercolour paper lying around as well because I like to sort of play and to sketch. And this was the rune of the self. This was the very first rune that I played with. I got out a watercolour pencil. I drew it onto here, and then I literally just washed it over with a little bit of water. And I actually really loved the way it sort of almost accumulated and made it, again, slightly rustic feel to the edge. I did actually also, I would say, have to sand these down. The paper didn't cut terribly easily, but nevertheless, again, I personally really liked that. So I was really, really pleased with the way that came out. We could use any colours we wanted. I'm going to actually make one for you while we're here. Let's go. This is the first rune, the rune of the self. We've actually done the rune of partnership. So let's do the rune of signals. I'll use, I think, just a purple one. Now, the rune of signals, it looks like this. This is the rune of signals here. This is signs, signals, synchronicities. It's that the universe sending you messages, giving you signs. You're open to guidance. So very, very lovely energy. Quite a nice, well, they're all quite easy to draw, I think, relatively easy to draw. I'll kind of show you how this process worked for me. As I said, it was very much a process of playing around with it, and I liked the sort of aspect of not being quite sure how it would work out, but being able to give it a go. So that's literally how I started drawing that. I then got a little bit of water and a paintbrush. I will, of course, actually, I think at the end, need to varnish these because otherwise, you know, they could be a little bit not so durable. But, you know, I like the way that sits. What I also then did was to, because watercolour pencils will really indent into water just to reinforce the actual image. While it was actually wet, I kind of went over it again just to bring that out, and it kind of indents. And you could do any number of colours, or you could do a whole set in the same colours. And again, it doesn't have to be a piece of MDF, it could be a piece of wood, it could be anything that you can find. Again, you could be attaching it to cardboard or layers of hardboard. It's really about being creative. I think there's a lovely energy when we are using resources that are literally lying around that might not otherwise be used. So something very special about that. I'm actually just going to show you as well, you don't necessarily even also have to stick to the plain aspect of this. Let's do another one. I'll use another colour. I think I will do the next rune, which is the rune of separation, Othilla. Now, Othilla speaks of real property. It speaks of the need to let go of something in order to gain. There's always a gain, and the gain comes through the space that we get from, I guess it's space to receive, through the letting go of something, usually something to which we have had an emotional attachment. So again, I'm just going to get a little bit of water, kind of splash that around. I really like the way that sits on the edges. It's just I think they've become quite a personal preference for me, these actually. It's quite interesting. Although I plan to now make sets with all of these materials, and I'm going to come to these stones in a moment because they have a wonderful energy. But I like the way that we can also just kind of, you could add a little bit as well if you wish. You know, you can do some additional markings if you wish to. I wouldn't be doing too many markings that might detract, but nevertheless, we can be playful, we can be creative. And again, it's stuff, for me, this is stuff that I had lying around. So we have another little rune there. So kind of just wonderful energy, and it's about being playful, it's about being creative and using what we have. Now I'm now going to move to some of these wonderful, wonderful stones. Let's put those back. There we go, gateway can sit there, and symbols, synchronicities, signs can sit here. Let's move to the stones. I think I said to you, this is going to be my blank rune because it kind of has a shape in it that is already lending itself. Now, when I was playing with these, again, you could paint onto any stones, and if you live somewhere where you've got beautiful round pebbles, how wonderful. That is something that is now on my agenda. Next time I travel somewhere where I'm able to find small pebbles, I will be on the lookout. And again, for pebbles that I hope will be slightly sort of flattish as well, so that they can sit and I can see the symbols. But these are very, very interesting because they kind of have shapes to them already. So I think I'm going to go with this one first. Actually, it's an interesting piece. And I'm just going to sit with it and see. For me, actually, this is already tuning in really, really clearly, interestingly enough, with the rune of strength. It's actually a piece of flint, which I think is very much energetically attuned with the energy of strength. So I'm going to use a marker pen. That's what I was playing with earlier. And I found, for me, that was easier. I don't actually have any acrylic paints handy, and therefore, again, rather than going out and buying materials, I actually thought I'd use what I had. But we could just as easily be painting with a small paintbrush onto the stones. So I'm going to do this. It's really, for some reason, really speaking to me. It's interesting, as I was saying, about having that notebook handy. You'll find that certain pebbles, certain rocks will really, really communicate with you in terms of the energy of the rune that they wish to be connected to and with. Very, very interesting. Again, keeping that wonderful sort of what I would call meditative space. Now, what I loved about the marker pen was it slightly splays out as you use it, and I really quite liked that. It slightly spreads, so it gives itself a slightly crinkled edge. That's quite interesting. It's running itself along. There's a little crack in the stone there that it's running itself along. Just going to straighten that up a little bit. Yeah, I'm happy with that. It's lovely. It's got a really, really lovely feel to it. And again, we could use any colour that we wish to. I'm actually just going to lengthen that slightly. I kind of want that to be about the same. Cool. And so we have another rune, a rune of strength. So I hope, guys, that this is giving you a flavour of the possibilities, the different things that we can do, the different ways that we can literally play. And the key here, as always, it's tuning in to the energy that is, the energy that the runes have and the way in which they speak both to you and through you. In fact, I feel quite strongly I want to actually paint in this little rune of movement. It's really quite significantly dry, given that it was only made this morning. And I have a little bit of a nice sort of earthy ochre colour here, which is really kind of speaking to me for this. So I'm just going to dive that in. I don't know whether I will do this particularly well, but you know, again, it doesn't matter. It's actually about the energy that we invest in something and our desires in terms of, yeah, our desires in terms of intentions and in terms of wanting to work and connect with the runes. There we go. I have to say, I quite like the fact that this is almost going in slightly quite a rough, sort of non-accurate way. And again, it's curious because it doesn't really, again, there isn't a wrong or a right. We might find that, I mean, if for some of us, it's all about us and how we also work with the energy. Because for some people, you know, it would be important to really get those symbols really accurately right. For other people, they might want a more rustic kind of feel. So again, it's like for some people, they might want to decorate. The joy of actually working with both stones, well, with any of these really, perhaps a little bit harder with the wood, is that we can in fact decorate them. We could, so for example, these cardboard runes, we could, if we wish to, they don't have to remain completely, let's have our paint back again. They don't have to remain just as they are. We could put a little bit of an edge to them if we wanted to. We're not confined to having to keep something uniform or in any particular way. We could do whatever we like, and we could do the same with these. We could paint. Again, we could actually create a slightly more decorative type of rune if we wanted to. As a general rule, they tend to be fairly plain, mainly because the energy, of course, that's contained in them is coming through the symbol that's on them. But again, there is absolutely no wrongs or rights here. It's the enjoyment that you put into these will be the enjoyment that is carried within them and carried through the messages. I have to say, with the recycled cardboard, I actually prefer them with a little bit of an edge on them, actually. And I really do like the way the edge sits on these ones quite naturally. So, wonderful people, I feel that we've probably covered quite a bit in the making of runes. We could sit and make some more, but I'm probably more interested in engaging with you guys now. And actually, although there's always a delay, which is why it's so helpful for Dermot to be moderating and speaking with you, but actually it would be really, really lovely just to maybe tune in with you guys, hear your experiences, find out whether any of you have been making your own runes, hear your experiences about them. So I think I will do that. We could come back and do more, but these are just a few of the samples, as I said, of different materials that I've been playing around with, all of which are, you know, absolutely usable and very, very easy, I think, predominantly to access. We can lay our hands on things if we wish to. So I'm going to switch the camera back and come in and kind of connect in with you guys and see where you are. But yeah, it's all, for me, it's all about energy. Whenever we are working with the cards, we're talking about the transference of energy. When we're working with the runes, we're talking about energy. Our words, our thoughts carry energy. We are energy. And so, you know, when energy is transferred through messages and symbols, literally the energy you invest of yourself and in the process of making your runes will be present in them. And wow, what a bond. I mean, when you make your own runes, there is such a powerful connection and relationship with them before you've even started to actually work with them and use them. And truly, you may find as you start to make them that very clear messages and indications are coming through to you guys. So, you know, really, really big insights. So be sure to sit with every rune as you make it. I know that's how I suggest that we really start with, if we're working with runes, or indeed even with tarot cards. Get to know them one by one. Spend time with a card, spend time with a rune, really get to know it. And but I mean, when we're actually making one, I mean, gosh, you could make one a day maybe, or you could do the whole set on, in one go if you wish. But, it's quite an idea, isn't it, to make maybe one rune a day. Sit with the energy of that. Start with the first one, because they are a cycle. Start with the rune of the self and allow yourself to engage fully and immerse yourself fully in that energy. And then see how it speaks to you, see how it speaks through you. And then also see how that flows into the next rune, which in fact is partnership. And you'll begin to feel the shift of energy and the connection between the two as you build your whole set. I mean, it's an interesting way of working with them, and a very interesting way to really, really get to understand them. So wonderful people. Yeah, I don't know if we have any. I don't know if we have any questions. I've got Jenny. We are wearing the same gold nail polish. That's lovely. Thank you very much. How lovely. That's wonderful, Tonya. Brilliant. I'm enjoying that we are tuned in with one another, or our nails are tuned in with one another. That's fab. Guys, I don't know if you have any questions. I think I think I've probably covered everything that I wanted to cover, and hopefully, I mean, the purpose of today was really just to remove any of that stuff that we all have with the inner critic that gets in the way and stops us from being able to just, have a go and have fun, and, all those fears and worries about getting something right. Sometimes, especially if it's something that's going to be very sacred, we worry about this. Okay, let's have a quick look. Dermot is saying in the chat to check my WhatsApp. Ah, here we go. Wonderful. Megan Howard, lovely to connect with you, Megan. Asking me if I know anything about numbers. You used to get triple and running numbers and was told it's the angels with you, but I wasn't listening. Aha, since listening, the numbers have changed. Now always 11 after the hour. Right. Megan, it's really interesting. Okay. What I would say is, so Megan, I think there are lots of different ways of looking at numbers, and I mean, it would be quite interesting maybe to do a kind of a webinar about them. I think what I have noticed is that for different people have different connections to different numbers. I'm always very tuned into numbers, for example, in my dreams. Numbers for me always speak to me in my dreams, and if I see a number or I recognize a number, I know it will have significance, and I will then work with that. I would work with it as if it is the language of a dream. So although that if you Google numbers, you'll find all kinds of standard meanings. I am always interested in what the meaning of a number is for that individual person and how it's relevant for them in this moment in time. So I would suggest working with them in exactly the same way that I would work if I was in a counselling session, for example, and I was working with someone who had had a dream, and we were going to kind of sit and try and interpret that dream or understand it. Dreams have a language of their own, and we have to, in a way, be playful with it in order to discover what the dream is trying to tell us. And so I would be asking you to do the same with numbers. Write those numbers down if you're seeing them. Sit with them. Again, a bit like the runes, carry them with you. Allow them to communicate with you. Let that process emerge, and also ask for additional guidance and signals. And again, it's just as I was saying about the runes, you'll find that they will have very specific meanings that they wish to work with through you. You become that channel of communication. I think numbers are the same, or they certainly are for me. So again, if you're seeing similar numbers, work with them. Definitely use them as signs, signals, opportunities to gain some understanding. It may be they are really trying to draw your attention to something. So write them down, carry them with you. Even sit them maybe with, or draw some cards or some runes around them to ask for extra insight and guidance as to what is being communicated to you and for you at that moment in time. I hope that's helpful. Dermot, you have actually asked something which I think was a really, really good question, and I was going to raise this as well, which was, can people share pictures? I was actually going to say to you guys, we actually have an A to Z of emotional health Facebook page. I have to be truly honest with you guys, I don't do Facebook very much. It's not a social media site that I enjoy particularly. I use it for connecting up with certain people, but I do have an A to Z Facebook page. And if you're passionate about amazing quotes, I actually have, that's what I use it for. I find quotes that I find really, really inspirational. I put them onto incredible photographs, and I will schedule them to be posted several a day. So if you're passionate about wonderful and amazing inspirational quotes, the A to Z of Emotional Health Facebook page is really worth a visit, because you'll get daily quotes and insights and in that way. But actually, how about we set ourselves to post photographs of our runes on the A to Z of Emotional Health Facebook page? I would love to share your photos. Now, it is set so that people can't post on it, with very good reason. I think it's appropriate that way, but you can send photos to me and I can then post them. So please, 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 as you make your runes, do send them. Let's put them up onto the A to Z of Emotional Health Facebook page. Let's see everybody's amazing creativity, because I think that would just be absolutely lovely. I don't know if there are any other questions. I'm just going to check in because I thought I saw one. Should we ask for the runes to be fabulous? Maria, thank you so much. Brilliant question. Should we ask for the runes to be protected or dedicated for our special use? I think that is, when we spoke at the beginning and I spoke about setting intentions, that would be absolutely what I would be suggesting that you bring into your intention setting at the beginning. When you are cleansing your materials, when you start, when you're setting your intentions for use, I would be asking that they are only ever used in love and light. For example, that would be one of my intentions. I would be asking for guidance. I think they always contain guidance in the pathway of the spiritual warrior. It's the nature of runes. But nevertheless, yes, you can ask for protection. You can ask only to be connecting into the guidance that's needed. You can also ask them to give you protection as a reader and offer protection to those that you read for. So absolutely, you most definitely can formulate whatever you really, really would like to be asking, and yeah, absolutely invest that in the cleansing aspect before you make the runes. And again, if you're making one a day, for example, if you're going to approach your rune making in that way, again, light a little bit of sage, maybe make a little altar with some really good energy around. Maybe bring in some angels as well. If you work with angels or you work with crystals, again, if you work with Reiki, you may want to bring some healing symbols if you're going to use them for healing. But sit them, around your materials so that they're kind of absorbing that energy. And then if you're making one each day, they're already coming from a very cleansed environment, if that makes sense. So I don't know if we have any other, I'm just checking in to see if I can see anything here that I can pick up on, but I don't know if there is anything else that I need to respond to. Dermot, you can fill me in on this one. But I think we are probably kind of coming to a natural end. Here we go. We've got Janet is asking, is there a blessing? I think I can bring that up onto the screen here. Yes, Janet, thank you. Is there a blessing or a prayer you invoke when using the runes? Personally, I tend to always, before I do any reading, I will always request help. I request help and guidance. I ask my guides, my angels, those that love and guide me, to actually walk with me, to help me to be of service, to help me to be a channel for what is needed. So always I begin by that kind of a blessing and that kind of a prayer. I sometimes do an Apache prayer that was taught to me. It's a really, really wonderful prayer. If I could stand up, I could show it to you. It's a bit like Tai Chi, where we ask we our spirit, we bring spirit in, we connect to the earth. So what is above is connected with below, and we offer ourselves in service, and we ask for anything we need to be brought into us. So it's a very simple prayer. We don't even have to voice it in our head. We do the movements, and so the energy is already being established. For me, it's a very good way of making sure that I'm cleansing the energy within my own body before I actually start either a reading. I do it before the workshops as well, actually. So it's just something that I like to do. We've got left to right reading. Why? Here we go. I think that's right. Let me bring that up. Left to right reading. Why? Do you know, I can't actually answer you as to why. Only that every book I've ever read speaks of runes being used from right to left. From the right to the left, cards from the left to the right. So it's really, really interesting. And I've always done this within my readings. For those of you that follow my readings, you'll know I read the runes right to left, the cards left to right. And it's curious, occasionally, of course, if I'm using the runes, let's say I'm using the runes in between cards, because sometimes I want to see if the rune will give me insight into the flow of energy or the flow of the message that's coming through between two cards. I'll place a rune between them, in which case they will then be in the same order as the cards. But predominantly, runes are always read right to left, cards left to right. I have no idea where that's originated, and if anyone finds out, let us know, and again, send it to me and we'll post it on the Facebook page. But a really, really good question. I don't know where it originated. What I do know is runes, the symbols of the runes go back so far. You know, some of the symbols of the runes have been found at different parts geographically all over the world, and you know, literally in cave paintings. So we are going back to sort of Stone Age times, I think. So pretty amazing, ancient kind of energy and ancient symbolism. So very, very powerful. So yes, somebody has also said, lovely, may I put a comment up here? Major Deasy, some ancient languages were written left to right. Yes, you're right. And some hieroglyphics are also some are right to left, some left to right. So very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So wonderful people. I think we seem to be coming to a natural close. So I don't know if we are I don't know where we are with this. I think you guys are probably still chatting in the chat, which is wonderful, but it seems to me that we've probably covered everything that we need to cover. It has been really fabulous, and I just want to say, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Those of you that are here with us live, thank you so much for all of you who have shown up. It's amazing that you are here. It's wonderful. Thank you. And for anyone who's watching this later, you know, thank you for watching. Do please consider joining our wonderful YouTube community if you are not already subscribed. We do all sorts of amazing stuff. We do all sorts of webinars all about learning to read cards, tarot cards, oracle cards, runes, collaborating and bringing the energy in. We're going to be doing workshops on the personalities of all the individual cards. So, you know, so much in store to do, and it's just a wonderful, the workshops and the webinars are just a wonderful way of connecting in with this community live. You guys are absolutely awesome. Dermot, thank you so much for moderating. You are wonderful. You are amazing. Thank you all so much for being here, and so much love to you all. Namaste.